Vedic astrology is related to Ayurveda, it's related to yoga, it's related to the Vedas, and the process of spiritual awakening. That's the point of Vedic astrology, is to help a person figure out their relative purpose in this world, what they're here to do, and also it can show how a person can develop their absolute purpose. And your absolute purpose is to wake up from this dream, to wake up into an enlightened state of awareness, to have a perfectly clear, eternal consciousness, your real self. Okay, that is your absolute purpose. Now, the work you're here to do, that could be anything from being a dishwasher, being a teacher, being a musician, a healer, yoga teacher, whatever it might be. That is your relative purpose, and it's indicated within your birth chart. So if you look at a person's birth chart, the Vedic astrologer can guide them as to where they would have the most ease of development in their life, where they would be able to find their resources so that they can live a happy and healthy life. Ayurvedically speaking, you can look at the chart and figure out a person's dosha, their disease tendencies. You can figure out what limbs or what organs of the body are subject to disease, to getting sick, and which ones are strong. And you can also look at a person's, their spiritual path. Remember, life itself is your spiritual path. Your spiritual path isn't just meditating, it isn't just doing hatha yoga, it's about the way you live. And Vedic astrology shows how a person can harmonize those aspects of their life. And, you know, Vedic astrology, just like any astrology, can go one of two ways. It can either be entertainment, which means you would set up a session with a Vedic astrologer. They would go through your life and they would tell you about stuff and you say, wow, that is great, you hit it right on. Okay, that's the entertainment portion, you're just amazed. Now, the other portion of that is the therapeutic aspect. Are any of you here familiar with Paramahansa Yogananda? Well, Paramahansa Yogananda, if you've read his autobiography, he was a very impulsive little yogi, running around all over the place, trying to get away from home, trying to find his master out in the Himalayas. And his teacher, the one that he finally met, Swami Yukteswar, was a very stern, very strict disciplinarian. And Yogananda would always say, Sri Yukteswar could have been one of the most popular teachers in India had he not been so hard on his students. Right? Now, Yogananda, when he was born with this devotional temperament. He needed Sri Yukteswar to put his foot down and say, you need to calm down, you need to focus, you need to be able to do things which you do not necessarily want to do, such as he did not want to go to college. Sri Yukteswar said, you should go to college. He wanted to run away to the Himalayas. Sri Yukteswar said, no, stay here in town. And finally he went across the sea to the west, and he started Self-Realization Fellowship here. Now, the reason I'm telling you this is because if Yogananda had not had a teacher such as Sri Yukteswar, who was also a Vedic astrologer, to discipline him, to look at his planetary makeup and say, this is what you have, however, you need to balance that out. And that's what a good Vedic astrologer can do. Okay? And I want to quote Swami Sri Yukteswar. This comes from the autobiography. Sri Yukteswar said to Yogananda, this is in the very back of your book if you want to look at it, the message boldly blazoned across the heavens at the moment of birth is not meant to emphasize fate, the result of past good and evil, but to arouse man's will to escape from his universal thraldom. What he has done, he can undo. None other than himself was the instigator of the causes of whatever effects are now prevalent in his life. He can overcome any limitation because he created it by his own actions in the first place, and because he has spiritual resources which are not subjected to planetary pressure. Okay, remember that. Your astrology can be very powerful in pushing you in certain directions, but you as a soul, you as an individualized unit of supreme consciousness, do not need to be overly influenced by your astrology. Your birth chart, the thing that you've come in this life with, that is a snapshot of the habits and the tendencies and everything that you've been doing. We'll just take reincarnation as real, okay? For those thousands and millions of lives that you've been reincarnating, you've been doing the same things over and over and over again, okay? And that's what's reflected in your birth chart. For example, if you get up every day and you eat bacon and eggs for breakfast, and someone says to you, well, what are you going to have tomorrow? You're probably going to say, I'm going to have bacon and eggs for breakfast. Okay? And that's an example of a daily action that you do every day that sustains and holds that karma within your life. Now, The same thing, if a person wants to lose weight, get healthy, strengthen their heart, but they're eating bacon and eggs for breakfast every day and not eating a healthy diet, and you tell them, look, in 6 months you're going to come into a planetary period where if you don't change your habits, something serious is going to happen. You need to be aware of this. And they say, but I can't do it. I don't know how to do it. And that helplessness that comes up from them is just because they've been doing the same thing for so long that they don't know how to do anything different. Okay? If you've ever tried to break a habit, it's only because you've been doing it for so long you don't know how to do anything different. Right? Now, the reason I'm telling you that is because these things that you're experiencing in your life can be changed. All you have to do is to first have the intention to change it, and then start taking the actions to change it. And you might not be successful the first time. I mean, think about the first time you tried to ride a bike, or the first time you tried to play a musical instrument. Could you do it well? No, you couldn't, okay? These musicians who are fantastic at what they do, they've spent thousands of hours, more than thousands, tens of thousands of hours perfecting their art, okay? Yogananda, one time, a student said to him, you know, you're a master. How can you expect us to do the things that you tell us to do? Because, you know, you're a master. That's why you can do it. And what Yogananda said was, well, how do you think I got this way? You know, I was not born like this. I committed myself to changing, and then the changes occurred within his own life. All right? So Vedic astrology will give you a snapshot of where you have been. It will give you a snapshot of all the things you've been doing up until this lifetime, to when you were born. And then what you do is you use that chart as a key, as a map to your own liberation of consciousness. And that's why I made this little booklet here. Are you familiar with the Yoga Sutras? Have you read those before? I took some select sutras here, and I just picked a few out that seem to be appropriate to Vedic astrology. And I made some commentaries here. So if you read this, this is going to give you a very good idea of how you can overcome your planetary influence. Now, there are many different ways you can do that. One of them is with gemstones. For example, pearl works to strengthen the moon if you have negative lunar influences in your chart. You can also use what are called Rudraksha beads. Now, Rudraksha beads, these are the seeds of a Rudraksha tree. And they're different, so they each have facets. If you see these lines around here, these lines around the beads. So this is a 12-facet Rudraksha bead. And I have an 11 and 10. Actually, I have them from 2 up until 12. And each of the facets, like the third facet represents the planet Mars. The 2-facet bead represents the planet of the moon. The 12 is the sun. And so what these do, you can get these from India, and they're blessed before you receive them. They help to, I wouldn't say negate the planetary energies that you're experiencing, but they help to kind of like shield you from them. Just like a lightning rod in a roof. The lightning will hit the rod rather than the house. It's the same kind of thing. The planets are always casting forth their energy. They're always casting forth their prana. And what makes the difference as to whether you're going to be influenced by different planetary energies depends on what's within you, what's within your birth chart. And that birth chart reflects your spinal pathway. The spinal pathway, along it you have the chakras. And the chakras are represented by different planets. And the zodiac signs are also represented within the chakras, within the body. And so those karmic tendencies that you have are stored along this pathway. Now,